feasting on the food without knowing the horrific truth that they were feasting.
The kids were feasting on their mom. Bro, that's nasty.
On
Yo, welcome back to the room, back at another video. Today we're gonna be reacting to the most painful World War II deaths by a talking hat. Before we get to the video, make sure to sub, like, and comment if you feel like it. Let's get straight into it.
The tank incident. On May 14th, 1940, dawn crept over the burning village of Ston as a German column of about 50 soldiers moved along the narrow road. Their rifles were slung and they marched in with confidence certain the French had fled. You see, the two forces had been battling all day for control of the tight, narrow village, but the German weren't too concerned of the French, as they were typically
little
seen as
informational
easy to
video.
defeat, and the Germans had reinforcements coming in. The 50 troops began to clear out the village, effectively covering
Whoa. Go ahead and sub before I do something I don't want to.
the area in smoke and soot, making it extremely difficult to see. But just as the men were beginning to relax, that's when the smoke finally began to clear, revealing a 31-ton steel beast, barely even a couple meters away. The German soldiers froze because most men at the time had never actually seen or dealt with a tank face to face. And to add to their trouble,
Yo, imagine they putting your life on the line and it's your first time seeing a tank. You're cooked. You're fried.
their anti-tank weaponry wasn't even set up.
Yo,
The men began panicking and tried to run away. But
they did not train them for that
village
shit.
was a very, very narrow road. Backed between their own defenses and the slowly moving tank, many of the men slipped on gravel and each other, falling in the road's ditches. And as you could guess, the tank didn't stop. It crawled forward through the chaos, crushing weapons, bodies, and helmets beneath 30 tons of armor. Screams and grinding metal emerged into
I thought it was
one
moving.
terrible noise. When it
I don't like the noises he's using. I'm not gonna lie, I'm
finally
not
passed,
liking the noises
road
he's
behind
using.
was painted red and silent. The Germans who had witnessed the event fled in horror, and that single French tank went on to destroy two other enemy German tanks and reoccupy the town's control. Breaking Bad. The man's team was completely ambushed by the Soviets. The men ducked and dodged gunfire as they skied through heavy snow as fast as they possibly could. You see, just moments earlier, this man was leading his squad to prepare an assault against an unsuspecting Soviet skiing group. But little did he know that two Soviet platoons were planning an even bigger ambush on the Russians. But even at that, their enemies were still on their tail. Cold, starving, and completely exhausted, the soldier became sluggish and began falling behind in speed with his team. In that moment of despair, the man remembered that he had a pack of, the things that these guys make, all stuffed inside of his pocket. The man tried to take just one, but due to his big mittens and violently shaking hands, he decided that it'd be easier to consume the entire container. Instantly, a surge of energy overcame the man. He was no longer cold, hungry, or tired,
Damn.
and he began skiing like a literal lunatic. Then he blacked out. Horrifyingly enough, even though the man was completely unconscious, he still
Ain't no way he
kept skiing.
survived.
The man woke up in the middle of nowhere with no food, weapons, or supplies. And, he also realized that he accidentally left his team behind. He kept skiing, eventually stumbling across the camp of enemies he and his team were literally running away from. Instead of avoiding them, the man was manic. He didn't care, and he skied right through the middle of the enemy's camp with some of the Russian soldiers, even making room for him.
I might
He
need
kept
some of
skiing
that.
without food, shelter,
Shit.
or teammates for 7 days. Eventually, in his deluded state, the man found his team's camp. He stepped inside, searching for help and warmth, and that's when he'd hear a click. In an instant, the man's vision went white. He had stepped on a landmine and nearly blew his leg off. Deeply wounded, the man got back up and attempted to go inside one of the base cabins. But when he opened the door, he'd be welcomed to another untimely surprise. The man's body would be left to freeze in the snow for days. But to the utter shock of soldiers that stumbled across him, he was still alive. They brought him back to camp and found that he survived a Soviet ambush, stepping on 2 landmines and freezing alive in the snow. Most insane,
Damn.
however, they just
Hey, it was not that nigga's day. Hey, it was not his day, bro.
discovered that he skied 250 miles in a week, and his heart rate was still jumping at an insane 200 beats per minute. Most battles in history are simply competitions of engineering, courage, and strategy. But luckily for you, you can experience that same test of power with today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive
All right.
vehicle contains the helm for every life with no other option but to flee through the swamps under cover of darkness so that they could retreat away. But what they didn't necessarily realize is that the mangroves of Ramree hid a huge reptilian nightmare. Beneath the waters of the marsh that the soldiers were trying to escape through waited an unbelievable amount of 20-foot saltwater crocodiles. As the soldiers moved deeper and deeper into the muddy water, the night's silence broke out with chaos. British troops positioned along the perimeter later recalled hearing screams, splashes, and bursts of echoing throughout the swamp, followed by the guttural roars of the predators.
This shit like a horror movie scene. I could never be in the military.
Dragged into the deep waters of the swamp by the crocodiles. Heads were crushed by jaws, some were torn to shreds, and others were swallowed whole by the beasts. When morning came, the swamp was silent. The British patrols found supplies half buried in mud, torn uniforms tangled in roots, and the heavy drag marks of massive reptilian tails. Out of the 1,000 Japanese soldiers who entered the swamp, only 20 came out alive. The massacre was so profound that
thousands to 20
still debate and argue with each other on the topic's validity.
Hey, y'all not gonna spin back though?
Insanity. Many primary documents and witness reports from soldiers on the battlefield entail that most of the soldiers were in fact devoured by crocodiles. Nonetheless, in just a few days, the entire army that entered the swamp completely disappeared. Hundreds of men were reported missing, and history was left to only speculate on what really happened in that dark marsh. The cannibal incident. In 1941, a certain angry mustache man decided that it was finally
Hold on, this shit about to get weird. Let's get ready. Shit about to get weird.
Time to invade the Soviet Union. He sought Leningrad, the birthplace of the USSR and its second largest city with a booming population of 3 million people. The mustache man wasn't interested in just conquering the city. In his words, he wanted to obliterate it and wipe it off the face of the earth. However, after a couple of failed attempts to invade the city and destroy it, German generals decided to go with the original plan they were given, the starvation siege. Their forces swept from the south, while Finnish troops advanced from the north and closed around the city. Leningrad was officially encircled and trapped.
I don't like where this is
going.
going.
72 days, they would be blocked off from water, food, supplies, and energy. The city was effectively cut off from the world, and more than 2 million civilians would be subjected to relentless plane bombings, artillery shelling, freezing temperatures, and worst of all, starvation. As the days passed on, civilians were given ration cards so that they could eat half of a bread slice each day. And to add to that, the bread wasn't really even food. Instead of being made with flour and sugar, the bread the people were given to eat was mainly made of sawdust and animal feed. Nonetheless, it was still considered as one of the most valuable food items in the city. People withered away into walking skeletons on the streets. They burned books and furniture for warmth and boiled leather belts for food. But it wasn't enough. Families would be left with no option but to eat wallpapers.
Bro, imagine your family being left in a stage where you can't take care of yourself. Like, you're in a, you know what I'm saying? It's a tough position to be in, bro. Like, I really feel for him, for real.
Rodents, and even their own pets for survival. However, when that failed, starvation eventually broke the last barrier of human morality. On a freezing cold afternoon, a plumber at a packing plant was one of the first to commit the atrocity. He couldn't stand the state his sons and nieces were in, so when he found himself alone with his wife, he attacked her. In silence and secrecy, he turned her into food, then later on showed up to his children and nieces and told them that he found a stray dog on the street and harvested it for its meat for them to feed on. The kids were delighted, and they began feasting on the food without knowing the horrific truth that they were feasting.
The kids were feasting on their mom. Bro, that's nasty.
On their own mother.
That's nasty,
enough,
bro.
The majority of the starving citizens did not do this at all. A woman so skinny and weak would be mistaken as a corpse, and still, neither she or her husband wouldn't succumb to the same savagery. They clung to their dignity, and even though each day was a waking nightmare, the city of Leningrad refused to surrender to the Germans.
Clung to their dignity.
Nearly
Bitch, I'm
900
hungry.
excruciating days of anguish, the siege
Ain't kind of
finally
dignity. I'm
shattered in
hungry.
January 1944. Over 1 million people had perished in the devastating atrocity. The woman and her husband both survived the event, but unfortunately for them, they would lose one of their sons to a disease during the siege. However, 7 years later, the married couple would go on to have another kid, and that kid's
damn. They can't get no breaks of misfortune, nigga.
Name would turn out to be Vladimir Putin. War is a horrible thing, and being a soldier is an excruciating task. But history is wonderful because it shows us how we as a species can do better in the present. Always show respect to those who are courageous enough to stand up and defend their loved ones. And as usual, have a happy day. With that being said, remember to check out War Thunder and immerse yourself.
We not checking out War Thunder. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to sub, like the video, and comment if you feel like it. Peace.